Hello everyone, this is a brief video about the debates with those claiming high carb intake is necessary post-fast and others, such as myself, who maintain that it is actually dangerous, which is true today. We see insulin's central role that has misled us. We have started with a model truncated and skewed in the 70s and 80s. So Ansel Keys, who pushed a 55% carbohydrate program. He had conflicts of interest naturally with the sugar lobby, conflicts to sell statins, so we demonized fat, which was blamed for all the world's woes, all heart disease, etc. Thus, we were consistently led to believe the issue was calories, and that the 55% carbohydrate intake was truly the standard requirement, meaning the well-known food pyramid. We observe now that the updated food pyramid from JFK Kennedy. Now, I'm not here to delve into political arguments or other matters in the United States, but in short, has entirely revised the food pyramid, although he was unable to eliminate every single carbohydrate. But he removed a lot, so we are not at all on a model. At 55% carbs, I don't know the percentage, but it's really proteins, quality foods. We are on something quite smart. Afterwards, he had to compromise. He still couldn't completely eliminate all carbohydrates in his pyramid, but regardless, it is truly very interesting and forward-thinking. In any case, for the US, everything coming to the US will surely arrive in Europe. So I think this model of over 50% carbs will disappear over time. In any case, we'll discuss it for a moment. So we were made to believe that yo-yo diets came from a lack of willpower, that people didn't move enough. In fact, all that is nonsense. The problem is insulin. It is a hormone responsible for lipogenesis, meaning if you consume carbohydrates, when I say carbs, it's everything, it's the sweet things, but also slow sugars, potatoes, pasta, bread, rice, all that is carbs. And then when you eat that kind of food 4 times a day, you have adiponectin secretions that go up, and then you store, you don't stop. So the problem is when you come out of a fast, when you resume this type of diet that you have already done, in fact, nothing changes. All your problems will come back, in fact. So that's why the idea is really to achieve a total reset. And we don't need to function with carbohydrates. All that is nonsense. We are more suited to function with ketones, which are a clean fuel, than with a carbohydrate fuel, which is less healthy, less beneficial for health. There you have it. So a high carb diet when coming out of a dry fast for me causes genuinely serious metabolic issues. Therefore, it is a complete falsehood. So we were told for decades, eat fewer calories, move more. Fats are really dangerous. Carbohydrates must represent 55% to function, for the brain to function. There you go. These recommendations from Ansel Keys are completely truncated and skewed based on a model that produced the known outcomes: the surge in diabetes, the surge in obesity, all the lifestyle diseases, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, all inflammatory diseases. So if this approach worked, we would really have had a better health today, which is exactly the opposite. There you go. So the escape route is insulin. It's the hormone that reacts to carbohydrate consumption. As mentioned, it is a storage hormone. There you have it. So it stops fat burning. Every time insulin goes up, you really block lipolysis, so fat burning. You increase overall inflammation whenever insulin elevates, causing the metabolism to slow. When insulin drops, the body burns, loses fat, so you lose weight. You have more ketones, so you have a clean fuel. Fat becomes accessible. You experience genuine cellular repair, and autophagy becomes active and accelerates. So the issue is not what they've made you believe for years regarding calories, food quantity, or cravings. But the problem is these famous insulin ups and downs all day that create what we call yo-yo effects. And that's why all diets don't work. Because people haven't understood that insulin was the problem, there you have it. So they focus on many foods. Even if you eat fruit all day thinking you're doing good, well, that's wrong. Because you have insulin rising and falling all day long. Then that causes chronic fatigue, insulin resistance, and all these famous civilization diseases. There you have it. So it's this famous Dr. Bickman, an American researcher specializing in metabolic science. He was very clear, stating that obesity does not cause insulin resistance. Rather, insulin resistance is what causes obesity. He heavily stressed a specific test marker frequently discussed on this channel, glycated hemoglobin, or HbA1c, which serves as an indicator of chronic glucose spikes, metabolic toxicity, and accelerated aging. Thus, an increase in HbA1c signifies that the blood stays too long in the blood, insulin is always being triggered, tissues get resistant. So even in lean people, this happens, right? Therefore, the primary issue following a dry fast, and remember, dry fasting is among the most potent instruments available for significantly lowering insulin, to re-establish a properly functioning metabolism. You have effectively cleared out your waste products and toxins, and you have reset various bodily processes. Dry fasting is a strong tool for restoring metabolic function and simultaneously decreasing inflammation, thereby reactivating the entire process of autophagy. Exactly. So what's the thought process to insist on giving carbs right after a fast, after a water fast, a dry fast? A real metabolic mistake. It's really not understanding physiology. There you go. After a dry fast, the cells are hypersensitive, so insulin reacts violently, meaning the slightest intake of carbohydrates immediately causes insulin to spike, so you immediately create metabolic problems afterward, so it is absolutely not indicated. So the Russian model insists heavily on carbohydrates after a dry fast. We rely on scientific evidence moving beyond that particular paradigm. That's the reality. Insulin responds violently directly to the slightest carb intake you have, even like I showed in the video about coconut water, that is sugar, and immediately you trigger a buildup of glucose and visceral fat storage, among other things. Consequently, these excessive insulin peaks generate a rebound inflammatory effect and reprogram the body for storage, essentially signaling it to accumulate. You are unable to reduce the fat in your abdominal area or any other fat deposits throughout your body. You can create a diabetic terrain if you continue a carb diet after a dry fast. You reprogram for carbs, for storage, etc. So it's sabotage of the work you did in the fast, so it's nonsense. When you fast, you really must have the goal, a reduction of carbohydrates at all costs, focusing entirely on insulin spikes. That's why many people have glucose sensors, to really see where they are. Every time they eat a food, they can see immediately the blood sugar goes up, tap, tap, tap. Now, I'm not saying you can eat fruit from time to time, okay, but we take them intelligently, rather at the end of the meal, etc. Therefore, the yo-yo dieting phenomenon is not a personal failing, rather it is an entirely predictable hormonal reaction. Elevated carbohydrates lead to elevated insulin, resulting in storage, fatigue, hunger, subsequent restriction, a crash, and weight regain. This is a hormonal cycle. So it's not something that has nothing to do with psychology. So insulin stays unstable, no diet works long term. This you must understand well. It is not a matter of willpower. So the clear message of this video: the problem is not calories, the problem is not the quantity either. You are free to eat until satisfied any quantity of fats, meats, proteins, whatever you desire. There are no problems associated with that. The persistent issue is chronically elevated insulin. high and then after a dry fast going back to 55% carbs. It's a total aberration. It's a historical error. It is a nutritional deception that has been forced upon us. They have brainwashed us, and subsequently, most people jump right into it without genuinely comprehending this matter concerning insulin. So, in conclusion, if they told you that you were weak, that was false. If they told you that you lacked discipline, that's false too. The problem isn't you, but the model was the problem. So there it is. So how to stabilize insulin, how to successfully navigate a dry fast, how to resolve your HbA1c naturally. It begins by focusing closely on the amount of carbohydrates you consume daily, by having appropriate meal intakes. There are categories of things you must consume. There is a precise order when you eat foods, because if you do consume a few carbohydrates, there is an order. It's better to have them at the end of the meal. There is a whole strategy that must be taken. And if you want the marker for your fluctuating blood sugar, it is the HbA1c. This marker is genuinely dependable and metabolic, providing you with an exact reading of your current status. That is the case. That was all. That was just a short video to put back into perspective those who think carbs are necessary after a dry fast. No. You don't need that. And above all, it's about continuing the ketosis. Work is being done. And you don't block, you don't undermine the fast upon refeeding. That's it. If you eat healthy foods that don't raise insulin, that is truly the key. Afterwards, if you want to reintroduce some carbs, okay. But you must wait a few days after exiting to refeed. Because the problem with carbs is that if you mix them with protein, with fat, it's a meal that is way too heavy. So it makes no sense to give carbs after a dry fast. It's a meal much too violent, it's indigestible. In fact, you have too many things your metabolism cannot digest. You don't yet have enough enzymes to digest everything you eat. So we must really respect maximum digestion. And if you put in carbs, it clogs up. It's too heavy to digest, so you won't manage it at first. So this is yet another argument showing that consuming carbohydrates at all costs after a dry fast is wrong. It's false. There you go. That concludes everything for today and for this video. See you shortly.